Hi, my name is Hugh, and with me I have Lachlan and Khaled. This is an educational video on some of the key economic metrics fundamental to practicing international project management. Today we'll be talking about gross domestic product, gross national income, and purchasing power parity. I'll now pass on to Khaled to continue.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whatever time zone you're in whatever country you're watching this video from. I'm going to take you through gross domestic product, the GDP. The GDP is the market value, or rather the total monetary value of finished services or goods produced within the borders of a country at any specific period. GDP offers an economic preview of a country, thus it utilizes to estimate the size of a country's economy as well as its growth. GDP is determined by using three methods. The three methods include income, expenditures, or production. And the three ways of calculating GDP are adjusted for population and inflation to offer deeper insights. Although GDP has challenges in determining the total monetary value, it is also utilized as a critical tool to guide businesses, policymakers, and investors in strategic decision making. Now, the four well-known types of GDP are nominal GDP, real GDP, GDP growth rate, and GDP per capita. I wish I had a little bit more time to speak about these things, but I'll move on to the next thing, which is the formula, the GDP formula. The GDP formula is made out of personal consumption expenditure, which is plus with the business investments, which plus government spending, open bracket, exports minus the imports, close bracket. I'll pass on to Lachlan now.
So gross national income, or GNI for short, is a statistic used to measure the net total earnings of a country's inhabitants. GNI is a summation of a nation's gross domestic product and income from foreign sources, such as foreign aid. As a result, most developed countries have an extremely similar GDP and GNI. In 2019, Australia recorded a GNI of $1.393 trillion US, exactly matching its GDP. On the other hand, a nation's GDP and GNI can vastly differ for numerous reasons. Firstly, if a nation receives foreign aid or economic development aid, their GNI is much larger than their GDP. For example, Afghanistan, due to its ongoing conflict issues, receives a lot of external reconstruction and development aid. As a result, their GNI of $20.72 billion US is proportionally greater than their GDP of $19.1 billion US. Secondly, a country's GNI can be lower than its GDP when a large proportion of the country's production is controlled by foreign companies. This is evident in Ireland, where the low corporation tax rates within the country have incentivized large corporations to base their economic activities within its borders. This is reflected in Ireland's GDP of $382.5 billion US, which is $57.1 billion larger than its GNI. Therefore, gross national income is a preferred statistic used by the World Bank when discussing a nation's economic status, as it reflects both the nation's output as well as any money invested into the country. I will now pass it along to Hugh, who will discuss purchasing power parity.
Now, in the space of international projects, if working in a country, it is all well and good at a glance to be aware of the country's GDP and GNI. However, this is not going to tell you much about how much supplies and resources will cost you in the country the project is taking place for budget estimation purposes. For this information, purchasing power parity is a key metric to use. Purchasing power parity compares the price of a basket of goods in one country to the same basket of goods in another country. If two countries are at purchasing power parity for a certain good, then the goods will cost exactly the same amount in each country if one currency is converted into the other. It is suggested that the exchange rates between nations should drift towards the purchasing power parity over time. To demonstrate how this works, I will use the humble Big Mac, something that can be purchased all over the world and has its own index from country to country. Now behind me we have the Big Mac index. In Australia we can purchase a Big Mac for $6.55 Australian dollars. In the US, a Big Mac can be purchased for $5.71 US dollars. Divide these two and you get 1.15, which is what purchasing power parity says the exchange rate should be. However, in reality, with the exchange rate is $1.43. So $1 US buying $1.43 Australian, which means that a Big Mac in Australia is $4.77 US dollars, showing that the Australian currency is actually undervalued. So that is purchasing power parity, gross national income, and gross domestic product. We hope that you've enjoyed this video.